Whether you're a first-time buyer or a current homeowner, you need to understand that the next purchase that you make is probably the biggest financial decision you've ever made in your life. And if you buy a home the wrong way, it can set you back 5 to 10 years financially. And not because the house was bad, but because you misunderstood what you were actually signing up for. So in this video, I'm gonna walk you through the real home buying process in Canada, from mindset to money to offer strategy, legal protection, and what happens after closing. That way you don't become part of the 90% of first-time buyers who admit that they have regrets. My name is Alex. I'm a realtor here in Eastern Ontario. Yes, my job is to help people buy and sell their houses, but my real focus is making sure that clients understand all of their options and they make educated decisions that they will later be very thankful for. So whether you're a first-time buyer or an experienced homeowner, you will learn some valuable insights in this video. I can promise you that. And hopefully these insights will prevent you from making the same mistakes that many buyers make on repeat. So of course, buying a house is a big deal. It's probably the biggest financial decision of your life, right? And it's going to change your life. But here's something interesting that other realtors are just not going to tell you. Buying a home is not just exciting, it's risky. And if you treat it casually, it will punish you financially. So let's start with the most important part, and that's step number 1, fix your mindset. Look, I say this in every real estate video. I say this to all of my clients. Buying a home is dangerous. Now, they usually look at me and say, "What? You're a realtor, you're saying this?" Guys, it's dangerous, not because it's bad, but because it's emotional. And emotional people tend to make some very irrational decisions. Emotional people tend to overpay, ignore red flags, stretch their budget, or rush to decisions, all because they're emotionally attached to what could be their home. You need to buy a home for what it truly is. That is a place to live. It's not your ticket to wealth. It's not a status symbol. It's not proof to everyone around you that you've made it. Reality is, a lot of first-time buyers are just trying to buy to escape something, whether that's living with their parents or renting or just the feeling of being left behind. But buying just to escape something is rarely a good financial decision. That's where renting comes in, and renting can actually be a very smart short-term move. See, renting is not the problem. The problem is if you rent and have no long-term plan. So now that your mindset is clear, it's time for step number 2, which is know your real budget and not the bank's. So first things first, get a pre-approval, don't guess. Even if you're planning to put in a finance condition, which will protect you, and you definitely should, the last thing you want is to waste 2 weeks trying to get approved for a home that you just could never afford in the first place, while the perfect home at the perfect price gets listed and sold during that time. Also, very important to know that there is a massive difference between a pre-qualification and a pre-approval. So pre-qualification is a rough estimate based on the numbers that you provide to the banker. There is no credit check, no fact check whatsoever. The banker assumes that what you said is true and gives you a verbal number. That is garbage. What you need is a pre-approval, and that is a review of your documents with a credit check, and everything is fact checked. You want to know something that the banks aren't going to tell you, but I will because I used to work there? All the banks are looking for is whether or not you can actually repay them, okay? And they do that through calculating what is known as your debt ratios. So there's 2 types of debt ratios: your gross debt service, or GDS, which are your housing costs only, and your total debt service, or TDS, which is all of your debts combined, including housing costs. And the way they calculate it is very simple. Just your debts divided by gross income. And they have percentage guidelines that they must follow. But here's the problem. The banks don't know how you live. They don't know your lifestyle. The banks don't know what you value, how often you travel, how you live, or if you're planning to start a family, if you want to buy a car next year. They don't know any of that. So if the bank approves you at $700,000, that doesn't mean you should go up to $700,000. What that means is it's your ceiling, not necessarily your target. Now, what about credit scores? A lot of people get nervous about credit scores. They don't have perfect credit. They get nervous. They think they won't qualify. The truth is that it matters a lot less than what you think. Unless you declare bankruptcy or stop paying multiple loans, there's really nothing to worry about. What your credit score is doing is it's affecting the interest rate that the bank is giving you. Now, this interest rate will affect the payment, which then affects the approval amount. But like I said, as long as you have some form of credit history and you weren't a complete fool with the credit that you have, you've got nothing to worry about. Now, for down payments in Canada, the minimum down payment is 5% up to $500K, and 10% on the portion between $500K and $1.5 million. And anything above $1.5 million, you need 20% down payment. If If you're putting less than 20% down, you have a mortgage insurance premium that is then added back into your mortgage. You don't have to pay that up front. It's added to the mortgage, no problem. But the part that many people are missing is that this premium is subject to provincial sales tax. So in Ontario, that is 8% GST. So for example, on a $400,000 home with 5% down, your CMHC premium is roughly $15,200, and the 8% tax on that amount is $1,216, which is due in full at closing. So that actually surprises a lot of people who don't see that coming, and it's a big bill, $1,200. Also, if you're a first-time buyer, then you need to open the FHSA immediately. It's tax deductible like in the RRSP, which equals refund. It grows tax-free, and withdrawals for a first home are completely tax-free. It is the most powerful savings tool for first-time buyers. Look, if you're planning to buy a house, you're saving for a down payment somewhere, why not get paid to do it? If you want a video that breaks down the FHSA in plain English for first-time buyers, then make sure you check out this video after this video is done. Step number 3 is to define your needs versus your wants. Look, the reality is you're either building exactly the home that you're looking for, or you're buying someone else's home, right? So the likelihood of finding a house that will have everything from your needs and wants list is very low. That's just being realistic. Your job is to separate your needs from your wants, and the way you do that is by understanding this concept. Your needs are your non-negotiables. You cannot compromise on your needs, and your wants are pretty flexible. You can compromise on your wants for the right home. For example, if you're a couple, you have 2 kids, then you absolutely need 3 bedrooms. There is no way to compromise there. On the other side, your wants are your nice to haves. So like quartz countertops are never a need. Also, when you're making this list, it's very important. I want you to think 5 years ahead of time. Will you be doing remote work? Are you planning to have children? Do you want pets? What about entertainment or family visits? Look, if you ignore future planning, you're gonna have to move again soon, and short-term home ownership is very, very expensive. Real quick, if you're getting value from this video and you want more Canadian finance and real estate related content, then make sure you subscribe so you don't miss one of my future uploads. Let's jump back in. Step number 4 is choosing the right realtor. Look, there's 2 sides to every transaction. There's the listing agent who represents the seller, and there's the buyer agent who represents the buyer. Now, of course, anyone with a real estate license can do either role, but I just want you to know that if you're a buyer and you're approaching the listing agent and you reveal anything, whether your timeline or what you love about the house or your budget, just know that they are legally obligated to pass that on to their client, and they will. Also, brokerage or realtor commissions are paid for by the seller at closing, so as a buyer, your representation and protection is already paid for. Unless you're dealing with a for sale by owner, which usually don't offer brokerage commissions. That's the whole point of selling by themselves. What that means for buyers is they must pay their agent's commission, so they either walk away or they negotiate that into the purchase price. And by the way, studies have shown that for sale by owner homes sell for about 18% lower than agent assisted homes, and in 2023 this number was only 13% lower, so it's signaling a trend in one direction. Saving the 5% commission to then sell your house 18% lower is not a good deal. It's not really a big surprise to know that hiring professionals gives you better results. I'm pretty sure you could say that about most industries. Finally, on the topic of realtors, look, you need to realize that not all agents are created the same. I'm not saying I'm the best one for you. I'm the best one out there. That's definitely not true. I'm still pretty early on in my career. But one thing's for sure when assessing whether or not the agent is actually working in your best interests, good agents don't hype you up. They slow you down. They explain the type of market you're in. They bring up comparables. They talk about risks associated. They come up with different offer strategies, and they also draft a comparative market analysis or a CMA. That way you don't guess or overpay. They protect you from yourself. If your agent is only talking about how hot the market is or how fast you need to move or how amazing this house is, that's not strategy. That's pressure. And hey, if you're buying in Eastern Ontario and you think would be a good fit, you'd like to work together, then be sure to head to the link in the description below. That's how we can get in contact and start talking about your needs. Moving on, step number 5, finally, we get to go on showings. But look, very important when you're touring homes, don't just focus on staging or how beautiful the house looks. Look for red flags. You got fresh paint and only a few spots in the house? That's a red flag. Musty smells? Red flag. Horizontal foundation cracks? Big red flag. Sloping floors? Red flag. Lifting shingles? Red flag. Water stains on the ceilings? Red flag. Original furnace, so like 15 to 20 years old? red flag. Cosmetics are cheap, but the structure is not. You know, not all of these are going to be deal breakers, but what they are is leverage in your offer. And they're definitely things that you want to know before you fall in love with the house. Ask your realtor questions. Always speak up. If something concerns you, speak up and ask your realtor questions about anything. Also, it might be awkward, right? If the seller or tenant is there while you're doing the showing, it might be awkward. You're walking around and they're just there. They're looking at you. Actually, a great opportunity to start asking about things like, hey, what's with that crack in the foundation? You know, what's that hole in the wall? How long has that been there? Is there anything wrong with the house? Definitely do let your agent guide that conversation though. Now, step number 6 is about the offer and the conditions. Offer is not just about the price, it's the terms, clauses, and conditions. It's also where you protect yourself. So your offer strategy also depends on the type of market you're in. So real quick, a buyer's market is where supply exceeds demand, which means a significantly higher number of new listings compared to sold ones. So for buyers, you're gonna have more options to choose from, probably less competition, and prices are likely dropping. Now in a seller's market, it's the opposite, where demand exceeds supply. There's likely shortages, there's more competitions, houses are selling quickly, and prices are rising. Now, in a balanced market, supply equals demand. Now, this is calculated through something called the sales to new listing ratio, which is a little bit outside the scope of this video, but your realtor should know what that is. And you should always ask your realtor what kind of market you're in before writing the offer. So before offering, you're gonna review the comparables in your area through a comparative market analysis or a CMA. You're also gonna look at the market data. Then you structure your offer. You come up with the conditions that you wanna put in, whether that's financing, inspection, or other conditions depending on the situation and the house. You're likely only gonna have 2 weeks for these conditions, depends on how long you guys asked for and how long was agreed to. So if the offer gets accepted, your clock starts ticking immediately. Even if you don't plan to use these conditions, they give you leverage. It's definitely a good idea to include into every offer. Let's say you viewed a house and you feel like there's a big concern, like the house, the floors are sloping. And let's say your agent asked the listing agent about it. They come back and say that the seller's not aware of any slopage. Look, I would see this situation and say, okay, so let's all agree on your statement, but in writing. So I'd come up with something like, the seller represents and warrants that to the best of the seller's knowledge, no structural movement, settlement, or shifting of the dwelling has occurred since the seller acquired the property in whatever year. You can find that, it's easy. And that no structural repairs or reinforcements have been required or completed to address such issues. If the seller signs that and something later down the line proves to be false, I've just strengthened my buyer's legal argument and legal position. Also, in case you're unfamiliar with the agreement of purchase and sale, a few terms that you'll be including in your offer are the completion date or closing date, irrevocable date and time, which means your offer is only valid until this date and time. If you don't hear back, it is a void offer. The chattels included, this is the movable property that is included in the deal. So for example, appliances or even furniture. If it's not written here, then it's not part of the deal. Fixtures excluded, this is anything that is attached to the property. So light fixtures, door handles, blinds that are screwed into the window casing. If this section is blank, it means they're all included. You're only including the ones that are excluded from the transaction. And requisition date, usually 2 to 3 weeks before closing, the lawyer will come in to investigate title to make sure it's clean. So once the offer is accepted, you have 24 hours to send your deposit. Your agent will provide you with the deposit instructions. So now it's time to fulfill the conditions, if any, so financing or inspection, get insurance quotes, contact a lawyer, get them involved. Step number 7 is all about closing costs and the first year reality. So a few days before your closing date, your lawyer is going to give you a call to tell you exactly how much you need to bring for your meeting. So that includes your down payment, legal fees, usually between $1,000 to $2,000, pretty typical. Land transfer tax. So first time buyers do have rebates, and in Ontario, it's on the first $368,000. The GST on the mortgage insurance premium, like I had explained earlier, if applicable, and adjustments like prepaid property taxes or utilities. And now comes the reality of the situation, especially for first-time buyers. You likely own an empty house, and you're gonna need to buy a lot of things to get started up, and it's going to be very expensive and it's gonna take a lot of time. Now, lucky for you, you're watching this video, so if you haven't already bought, you have time to prepare. But if you didn't prepare in time, don't worry. Like I said, it's going to take a lot of time. Just take it easy, day by day, you'll get there. I'm not just talking about appliances and furniture, although those are expensive items. I'm talking about everything else. I'm talking about like tools, cleaning supplies, dishes and silverware, cooking supplies, lawn equipment, window coverings, even things for small repairs. Look, it's going to add up very fast. You're also going to need to budget for maintenance and unexpected repairs. Your mortgage buys the house, but your maintenance budget keeps it running. You need to make sure that you're also budgeting the amount in your property tax statements, because if you don't, it's going to hit you like a truck. So budget, automate the budget on your paydays, easiest way to avoid any surprises. Guys, look, the truth is buying a house is life changing. It is the biggest financial decision you were ever going to make. And most people don't regret the house they buy. What they regret is rushing or overextending or ignoring risks or not understanding the reality of the situation that they're getting into. So buying a home can be one of the best financial decisions of your life, but it could also be the most devastating one. The difference is in the preparation. I hope this video was helpful for you. If it did, please leave a like. I would really appreciate it. And hit the subscribe button if you want more clear real estate and finance related videos aimed at Canadians. Reminder to go check out the FHSA video if you want to learn more about that and you're a first time buyer. But with that, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.